Welcome to the Tuesday Best Bet Show, the early edition before those guys on Thursday get their picks. I'm your host, G-Stack George, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. As always, I remind you, please like the content if you find value in what we do. Please subscribe if you're not already, and drop your plays in the comments because we always appreciate that. Always helps us out. Joining me, as usual, on Tuesdays, Christopher Dierkes, head of trading for Novig, one-time contest winner. And Flup, I got to say something. After the whole calling Lamar Jackson not to play fiasco, where you were the hero, you haven't won a game since that, my friend. Yes. I think you've been reading your own headlines like the Carolina Panthers a little too much.
Exactly.
We get back on track.
Oh, I'm going 3-0 this week. I feel it.
I feel it too. Are we on the same place? Because if you are, then I'm with you.
I'm not. I don't need your help. I can do it just myself.
Hold on. Before we get into our record, I just want to introduce Matt Russell, our third member. We've had a rotating guest, but I called in a ringer, Matt, because the Thursday show they went 9-0. So I need a big week from you, man. There's a lot of pressure here.
Well, listen, I was going to say, I'm going to write down Chris's picks. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I'm definitely going to write them down based on, what A, he's promising, and B, the recent results. But no, listen, I'll take one for the team, Chris. I'll grab the bagel this time, buddy. Don't worry. I got you. I'm a good guest, right? I didn't bring a bottle of wine or anything, but I'll grab the bagel for you here. So nice. Definitely do not write down my picks.
That's not Russell. Yeah. You can find his articles and his podcast over at The Window on Substack. Does some really, really great work. All right, let's talk about those records. It was a little bit of a mixed bag, but I think we're doing okay as a show. I went with the 3-0 last week. I got the Detroit, Chicago, and the Rams across. Lots of CLV. The Chicago and Rams game closed very well. Flup, we said had the bagel. Nobody was in for the third seat. That brings us up as a show. The record 36-33. With a minuscule 0.3% ROI. We got to get there. We'll grow on that. I promise you today. It'll be a great show. I'm really pumped about it because, man, it's a big card again. The bye week fiasco is gone. We have 15 games to go through. Let's not belabor the point. Let's start with the New York Jets and the New England Patriots on Thursday Night Football. Right now, New England is minus 12.5, minus 115 at FanDuel. Total's 43.5, shaded 120 to the under. Before we even get to this, Flup, you are a Jets fan who has been highly critical of Aaron Glenn. What do you make of his beef with the media when he's proven absolutely nothing? He's refusing to give injury reports. He's saying go get it from reporters. I don't get it. I don't get his he's way too confident for a guy who has 2 wins on the season.
This is cute and okay when you're Bill Belichick and you win all the time. It's not okay when you're Aaron Glenn and everyone wants you fired. It doesn't work that way. You got to earn the respect first. He hasn't earned it yet. If you're a winning coach, you can get away with this stuff, but he's not. And I don't think he's that good. I've always wanted Brian Flores. I still hope we bring in Brian Flores. So I'm not happy with it at all. But I'm not happy with anything he does.
Chris, who's the special teams coordinator for the Jets? Because that guy's breathing right down Aaron Glenn's back after those 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he literally single-handedly got that
right. He's throwing a little DVD under Woody Johnson's door. Because hey, Woody, did you see what we're doing over there on the special teams side of things? Aaron Glenn's highlight of the season's dancing down the sideline. My guy on special teams absolutely lighting it up, carrying the Jets. Of course, they might not want that. So, that you might want to keep that under wraps. Sorry about the points.
Matt, that was on a blocked punt, blocked kick too. You're right. The special teams guy is cooking in New York.
Yes,
right.
Well, let's start with this game though, because obviously 2 teams going in 2 different directions. New England looks quite good. Man, it looks like they might win the AFC East and maybe have the number 1 seed in the AFC. Matt, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this game?
This is like when Ole Miss played Citadel last weekend. right? It's like it's not a bye week, but like
Not
it's
that
also
extreme. I mean,
it's
that's
also
ridiculous.
kind of a bye week. Like we're gonna get out there, we're gonna get loose, we're gonna throw it around a little bit. No, obviously, I'm kidding. These are two professional teams here. I was late to the party. I saw that like -11, and I was like, I don't know, like maybe people think that's too many points with the Patriots, and no, nobody thought that was too many points with the Patriots, and we went to 12 and a half here. Listen, the only way I can look is the Patriots, only because they are so buttoned up. It's like they learned all of their mistakes from that Steelers game, which is like week 2 or week 3, when it was just a turnover festival, and you're like, this is the sloppiest team I've ever seen in my life. And ever since then, it's like, no, actually, we're going to just do everything correctly in true sort of Mike Vrabel type fashion. And when it comes to the Jets, right, they do so little on offense. It really isn't going to take much. It's not really going to require much here for the Patriots to be able to, kind of slowly take a lead here. And even, we saw, I think it was last year, very similar situation, right, where the Patriots were probably laying more than anybody was comfortable with laying against the Jets on a Thursday night, and they just kind of took care of them, super easily. So kind of see that coming again here. Again, not dying to lay 12 and a half on a Thursday, but man, when you're just buttoned up and you're not, making all kinds of mistakes the way that the Patriots are really buttoned up, man, that's what I'm into when it comes to the NFL. So many of these teams are so sloppy that you just do that, the bare minimum of like, don't screw anything up, and you're going to get my money a lot of the time.
Flop, it's been straight under money and straight Patriots money. There's not a Jets better in sight. Do you think this is the limit, or do you think there's a chance we flirt with 14 here?
14 is a pretty big. I mean, 14 is obviously a very key number. I would be pretty. 13 is reasonably key too. So like, I would be pretty shocked if we got up to 14. I mean, with this being Thursday, where the limits are already getting up there. So if you really wanted your fill, you could probably get a decent chunk down right now. So I think 13 is probably the limit. I would not be surprised if we see some Jets money come in at post. Everyone likes to back a lot of the sharper groups do like to back the very bad team at a big number. So we'll see.
Yeah, during the Sunday reset, Rob and Clive were talking this game, and I was in the comments saying I think 13 is the number, with Garrett Wilson being out. I was part of that early New England money. I even was tempted to give it out at 12 and a half, and then I just stopped myself. And the only reason is I just see this being a one-way game. Jets are third worst in the league at generating pressure. Drake May in clean pockets, and potentially with another cornerback down in Azarie Thomas, like he's going to cook them. And like we've been working on the premise of New England having an inefficient run game all year, 32nd in rush success rate. And yet last week against Tampa Bay, they had 2 explosive runs, second in rush EPA. It looks like Travion Henderson's going to be the guy again, because I don't think that Ramondre will be ready on a short week. And then the one thing on the other side of the ball that the Jets do well, okay, we know Breece Hall can run the ball well. They happen to play New England, whose run defense is incredible. And then I start to put the pieces together. No Garrett Wilson in a trailing game state. How much success will the Jets offense have? That being said, I didn't end up giving a bet. It was literally my cutting room floor game, because I got stubborn about a game that I want to get on there. Speaking of, if you're going to bet on this game, FanDuel's making week 11 even bigger, with a chance to win a share of $2 million in bonus bets this Thursday night. That's right, $2 million, and I'll be doing the watch along. I bet you Alex Moretto will not be there. The game is awful. Here's how it works. Opt in and place an anytime touchdown bet on the Jets or the Patriots. Use your profit boost, and if the player you pick scores either the first or the last touchdown of the game, you'll earn a share of $2 million in bonus bets, $1 million for each touchdown. That's it. Any dark horses? Maybe there's a favorite. Maybe you're just going to bet all the Patriots. Maybe there's value in betting any of the Jets just because you'd share more of the money. It's just one more reason to bet on the NFL with FanDuel. So whether you got a feeling about that opening drive or you're banking on a clutch finish, now's the time to get in the game. Visit FanDuel.com/forwardprogress to download the app today and get started. FanDuel is an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 and present in select states for Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino. 19 and physically located in Ontario. 18 and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Opt in. Must apply profit boost token on select market. Prize pool to be split equally among all eligible participants who made the correct first or last touchdown pick. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 21 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Call Connects Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 or visit connectsontario.ca. I swear, I think I read more words than the Jets will have yards on Thursday. Let's move on to.
I think we're done here, guys. Is there more? No. Oh, we're okay. We're gonna keep going.
All right. Here we go. Miami Dolphins 9 a.m. In Spain against the Washington Commanders. Miami -2.5, -120. Totals 47.5, -118 to the under. I want to start with this game. It's not often that I hand out bets on my team. In fact, I don't think I've ever done it on the network. But I will do it the first time. And you know what? Nothing like losing a hammer and it being on your own team and it being at 9 a.m. on Sunday where I'm all depressed by 1 o'clock. But let's start off. Miami will be my triple hammer, -2.5, -120. Right now, Miami's defense is perceived, I think, in a wrong way. First 5 games of the year, 31st in defensive EPA, 32nd in defensive success rate. The last 5 games, though, 13th in defensive EPA, 9th in defensive success rate. And I'm not cherry picking bad opponents. They played the Chargers, Browns, Falcons, Ravens, and Bills in that stretch. Washington, we had an experiment, Flup and I, about perception of Washington's defense. Flup, since we last talked, they're now 30th in defensive EPA, 26th in defensive success rate, and now they lose Trey Amos for the year. Deron Payne, their defensive tackle, suspended, and everything's like unraveling before our eyes. Dan Quinn says he's taking over the duties. The problem is, I think Devin Achan's speed is going to be a huge problem for Washington's defense, which is quite old. So specifically their linebacking core, like Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner, probably you're going to get cooked. The one strength of Washington's offense is running the ball, and yet the last 5 weeks, Miami plays against Bijan Robinson, Quinshon Judkins, Derrick Henry, and James Cook, and they are 2nd in defensive rush EPA and 3rd in defensive rush success rate. From a strictly matchup perspective and a number perspective, because there's going to be no Terry McLaurin for Washington, I make Miami just a slight touch over 3, and I like the 2.5 -120. Matt, let's go to you. What are your thoughts on this game? And am I being a homer, or was any of this landing for you?
I did like the quote unquote cherry picking, non-cherry picking thing. I didn't like the fact that you didn't read the FanDuel legal stuff in Spanish in honor of this game. Yes. That's kind of bumming me out. I got to tell you, like I was with you on the Dolphins, and then I found out that I'd have to give 2.5 points and maybe 3, the way that this tends to be trending. And I don't want to do that with the Miami Dolphins. I'm opting out of that. The Dan Quinn thing is interesting, right? It's like you saw Dan Campbell like take over the play calling and was like, you know what? That's an idea. I'm going to do the thing that I'm actually maybe allegedly good at instead of the thing that I'm not really all that good at, which is being the head coach and making decisions.
Dan Campbell had some toys to play with, though. I don't know that Dan Quinn has any.
No doubt. I didn't say it's going to work.
Yes.
I didn't say it's going to work. I just think that he looked across and was like, you know what? I should do this. So that is a little bit interesting because obviously the Commanders' defense is just an abject disaster and has been over the course of that same period of time that you referenced. I don't know. Like, listen, it's an international game. I won last week on an international game, and it was like the first time I can even remember being happy during an international game, or at least the end of an international game. I feel like the one thing with these international games is like, it's kind of like when a college girl like takes off for a year and just goes to find herself in Europe and just leaves everything behind. And you can't even really trust what's going to happen because they just, these teams just show up in Europe and who knows what to believe, right? The Steelers go and they take a, big lead against the Vikings. When, I recall the money moving against the Steelers that week. And we got kind of the same deal here where the Dolphins have had some success over this, just 1 week basically. But, they got a couple of wins, in the last month or so. And now is it just a matter of like, let's go to Spain and hang out a little bit. And meanwhile, you got Washington fresh off of not 1, but 2 pretty embarrassing losses. And maybe they're the more locked in outfit. It's just as soon as you cross the pond, everybody just kind of does some weird stuff. So, I can't promise you that I'm looking at like grab the +3 if it comes around. But that's kind of the only side that I would look on, and that would be, largely based on just kind of the idea of I'm going to dare the Dolphins to play 2 consecutive good games. And as well as anybody, like that hasn't really happened this season. It doesn't really happen for the quote unquote bad teams in this league. And, until proven otherwise, I kind of think, unfortunately, the Dolphins are still, in that cohort of being one of the bad teams in the league.
They might be. Flup, Washington's gotten a lot of money this year. Somebody likes them with influence. Did it end after the Detroit? Because I gave out Detroit 8.5 as my triple hammer. I faded Washington, and I had to watch that thing close 7.75 and be completely right. I was justified the whole way, and I still want to fade some Washington. I don't think people realize how bad the bottom is. What do you sense about the market in Washington in particular?
How much do you value Dan Quinn taking over play calling? Does it even impact your numbers at all?
No, because I just don't think he has the pieces. I think he has no pass rushers. The secondary is completely obliterated. And the one strength of his defense, Bobby Wagner, is up against a very fast running back. And I don't think he can stay with him. I think he's going to get cooked.
That's fair. I mean, the early money has all come in on Miami. And typically when you see the early money come in, it stays that way. So I think you getting 2.5 makes a lot of sense right now, because I think, as Russell pointed out, this is probably going closer to 3, maybe even breaks 3 at some point, which is why I like getting on it now.
Yeah,
it's definitely the bottom of the market on the Commanders. Sorry, George.
Yeah.
It is broken through any previous bottom from a market rating perspective. And to be honest with you, this is as high as the Dolphins have been rated since, honestly, before Week 1's fiasco against the Colts. So there's a bit of a buy low, sell high here. It's just the reality is with Washington, it might get lower over the course of the next couple of weeks, the way things have been headed.
That's my thing is, okay, Now when I asked Flup last week, how did he perceive Washington's defense? It was below average. It was 20th to 24th unit. And I showed him that they're bottom 5. I think in its current form, it's as bad as Cincinnati and Dallas. So I actually don't think we've truly because I don't think perception is there yet on them. And this could be the week in Spain where the real bottom comes. More importantly, their offense without Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel and Jalen Lane and Zach Ertz are not scaring you. And I find it's quite easy to defend against him. The one thing I'll add is because this is probably the angle that I don't think enough people are considering, is that Greg Dulcich loves Spain, and Greg Dulcich might cook in this game.
I just want to push back a little. I do think Dan Quinn does count for. Dan Quinn has been consistently a top coordinator in the league. I wouldn't put him on the same level as my hero Brian Flores or anything like that. But we do see these coordinators like Flores. Look what he's done with the Vikings roster. That roster is not that elite, and it's still a top 5 defense. So just because he doesn't have the pieces I don't think that excuses a improvement. I'm not saying this is a 2-point improvement. I do think it's probably at least a half a point, because he is a very good defensive coordinator and should be an upgrade.
Yeah, listen, I'll know at 12:30 if I've chasing a triple hammer loss. So that's always fun, trying to make up on the and last week was the first time I bet international game. Let's move on. Chicago, Minnesota. Flup, you got something in here. Minnesota right now is -3, -104. Totals 47.5, shaded 120 to the over. Flup, straight over money so far in this one. And the line is now at 3. What are you making of this game? What are you liking in this game?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't really have a ton of analysis here. I'm not going to pretend I do. The Vikings took straight money, and we're getting a cheaper 3, and this is the cheapest 3 on board. It's the best price on the board. So I'm backing the Vikings here. Caleb hasn't looked good. They just had a lucky win last year, or last week rather. I was very happy because I had them in Survivor. But the Vikings, they beat the Lions recently. I know they didn't. They haven't looked as good always, but laying 3 with the steam, I'm going to back them. And I know they just lost to the Ravens, but before that they looked pretty good. So we'll see.
Yeah, Matt, Vikings did look good. I thought the score against Baltimore was a little bit misleading. They actually played that game a lot closer. Now, Jonathan Grenard went down, and that changed things defensively. He's the guy who we're kind of watching for. Other than that, maybe TJ Edwards for the Bears. Matt, what are you making of this game?
Yeah, it's funny, and I think the market actually upgraded the Vikings on that performance, which is always kind of infuriating when they literally lose a bet for you, which they did for me last week, and they get an upgrade after the fact, which I think is the case here with them being the full 3 here, and you can look ahead to next week, and they're kind of still under 7 in the look ahead line against Green Bay. The false start thing was just an abject disaster last week. The 8 false starts at home. That's a quick 40 yards that you can, fix. I'm not super sure what's going on with Justin Jefferson. It just seems like, and I don't even know if it's a chemistry thing with JJ McCarthy. It's just he's just not making the plays that we're accustomed Justin Jefferson to make. We're out here with Jalen Naylor making all the plays last week. So I think, I don't have a play on this just yet necessarily, but I think Chris is onto something potentially with the stuff that they can clean up. Minnesota is way easier to clean up than what the Bears, who, I've been informed that they're 6-3. News to me.
Yeah.
I can't even.
This is a very bad 6-3 team. Obviously.
Yeah, I can't even believe it. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna need to check that. So yeah, like they didn't. It's funny. Again, Vikings lose. I think they get an upgrade in the market, and the Bears win. And I think the Bears actually might have gotten a little bit of a downgrade in the market because listen, you have to wait for Russell Wilson to get involved in a game to win at home. Like that's kind of a bad sign. So yeah, I had no argument here with regards to Minnesota.
Well, I'll point out 2 things. The Jefferson thing, I think there might be like some disinterest on a pick that Marlon Humphrey got late in the game. He had 10 seconds to try to tackle, and he just didn't make an effort. He stood on his spot, so that's concerning. Now, let me make the case for the Bears, so nobody accuses of us of being VNN News, the Viking News Network. Let me just make the case for the Bears. Vikings might move the ball like passing and running here against a Bears defense that is 24th in defensive success rate. But on the other side of the ball, the Bears have one of the best run games in football and just happens to be the one aspect of the Vikings defense you can take advantage of. They're 21st in defensive rush EPA, 17th in defensive rush success rate. But here's the real question is Brian Flores versus Caleb Williams, right? Brian Flores, 42% blitz rate, highest in the league, 2nd in pressure. Caleb against the blitz this year, it's kind of enigmatic of his play. So 55% completion percentage, inaccurate, 6 sacks on 87 dropbacks, and yet 670 yards, 8 touchdowns, no picks. So Caleb's still looking for the home runs even when he's getting blitzed. I actually think it's quite an interesting matchup. Nothing for me to do here. I might be tempted if it crosses the 3 to Minnesota, but I think it's going to stay on the 3. I had some early money on the over. I see some success from both these offenses, but we'll leave it at that.
I think it's probably more accurate to say it's Ben Johnson versus Brian Flores. I mean, and
listen, Ben Johnson has experience, and Detroit has killed the Minnesota Brian Flores blitz.
Although this Bears team does not have anywhere close to the weapons that Ben Johnson had in Detroit, obviously.
Are you appreciating Mr. Luther Burden, who might have a big game?
Yes, I am.
Let's move on to Green Bay and the New York Giants. Green Bay -7, -118 right now. Total is 43.5. I guess I'll start us off because, I have been looking to fade the Giants for 4 weeks in a row. I've used hammers against them 2 weeks in a row, and I'm going to use one again on the Green Bay Packers. Going to call it my single hammer. And I know there's 7s, -110s in market, but I actually think that there's a high probability that Dart will miss. Even without it, there's some asymmetric risk here. I think Green Bay is like a 6.5 point favorite if he does play, but I think he can go up to 9 depending on Russ or Jameis. Let's just break down the game. Even when this offense, like Green Bay, was efficient to start the season and never felt right, they were like top 2 in offensive EPA and success rate. Now they're 7th and 6th. Like that being said, this is the get right spot of all games. Giants' reputation is of this like formidable D line. It's stacked, and yet they're bottom 8 in pressure generated at 18% of dropbacks, 29th in both defensive EPA and defensive success rate, worst run defense in the league. Listen, I would love Matthew Golden or Romeo Doubs back. I also worry about Elgton Jenkins being out, and it's a rough interior O-line versus Dexter Lawrence on the Giants, who's very good. That being said, even with Dart here, I find it hard for the Giants, who don't run the ball well, to find success against this offense, especially if they're going to be missing their center again. against Green Bay's pass rush. New coach bump, whatever. I think there is a chance that Green Bay can get whatever they want on offense again and shut down the Giants. And I think if Dart doesn't play, I'm going to end up with a really, really good number. That being said, Flup, before I go to Matt about his thoughts on the game, let's say it's Dart, Jameson, Russ. Where do you see the numbers going here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody wants any interest in Russell Wilson here. I think you're right? Like grabbing the number now and then sort of seeing where it goes. The only thing that troubles me is just kind of everything I saw from the Packers last night. That's a game that, obviously from a health issue, standpoint, like you're going to be compromised. And I felt like they kind of gave up the idea of being aggressive on offense. And they were just like, we're going to just run Josh Jacobs over and over and over again. And like, it just, against the Eagles front, like I just didn't really think that was a particularly sharp idea.
Do you guys buy this report that from the beat reporter from the Packers that LaFleur could be coaching for his job? That seems. How are you going to blame him when it's Love? Like, what is going on?
I've heard it, but it doesn't register. It doesn't register with me. Like he'd be the number one coaching candidate if he got fired on the market.
That's right. I think so.
The Giants would hire him if he got fired somehow.
Yes,
the Jets might.
But I would be pulling for LaFleur to come to the New York if he was available. I mean, Jesus.
That's right. I think he's on the first plane if that's the case. Yeah, no, that's an odd one. Yeah, I think obviously when you're pulling out Bo Melton out of the receiver / cornerback and then back to receiver like bin, that's a bit of a desperate times thing. We've always kind of thought of the Packers obviously having a deep wide receiver core, but it was like, and I didn't think they were going to necessarily do this, but like they kind of threw out all the tight end plays just because Tucker Kraft was out. And I just, from a play calling standpoint, I didn't love anything I saw last night from either team, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's the only thing that's kind of, a concern to me from that standpoint. I don't see the Packers getting much of a downgrade in the betting market because of that game. I would normally downgrade them, but again, they're playing the Giants here, and it might group up and listen.
The receiver room and also with Tucker Kraft out was pretty decimated. I mean, yes. Could that have not impacted the offensive play calling because he's not used? These guys are not used to it, et cetera, et cetera.
And Dobbs got hurt. Dobbs got hurt before the last two drives, so there was a little. But listen, the Eagles' defense it might be like underrated now with the Jalen Phillips trade. Nolan Smith coming back from IR. They trade for Michael Carter. All of a sudden, I don't know. I think that might be an undervalued unit. It's one thing to not get your offense going against the Eagles on a cold winter night. It's another thing against the Giants, who they can't stop. Like the Bears torched them in a friggin' blizzard. What's Green Bay going to do in better conditions?
No, that's fair. I just look at the Musgrave thing where it's like he was drafted the same time as Tucker Kraft. He was drafted ahead of Tucker Kraft, and unless that was like a complete whiff, which you don't see like tight ends being massive whiffs, that he should have been used a little bit more, given the fact that the Eagles with Jalen Phillips had, an improved pass rush and general, defensive front, improvement. And so I just kind of looking at that going like, we can't run. It's not like Tucker Kraft was getting open on one-on-ones in some like elaborate way. It's just they would run plays for him. He'd catch it, and then he'd just run over a bunch of dudes. Yeah. I'm not asking Luke Musgrave to run over a bunch of guys. I'm just looking for them to throw a quick outlet to the guy. And like, let's kind of see let's see some of that playbook. And so them throwing out that page of the playbook, so to speak, was, sort of concerning to me because, again, like Josh Jacobs over and over and over, Marshawn Lynch style, just like wasn't going to do it for the Packers last night at home. In a game that I felt that they needed to be more aggressive offensively.
Let me give you an analogy. So the Packers offense looked pretty bad against a good Carolina defense and good Philly defense. If you're ever in the bar and you've been rejected a few times, maybe you want to get your confidence back up. You go for a layup option.
Maybe you go to Spain. Maybe go overseas.
The Giants are the last call layup of all layups.
Oh my God.
Oh dear.
This is a good analogy.
Let's go, Fluff. Carolina, Atlanta. Atlanta is 3.5 minus 104. Totals 42.5. Shaded 118 to the over. Fluff, you've got to play in this game. We'll start off with you.
Yeah. This is just a bet against one with the steam, and then two, or not even that much steam. Honestly, it's more of just a bet against two anemic offenses. There was a little under money, but then it got bought back. And, I'm not really taking a market play here. I just think both offenses suck. And when you get to both offenses suck, you typically see numbers in the 30s, not in the 40s. I know it's low 40s, but, this seems a little too high to me. I think should be closer to, 40 plus or minus a half a point there. So just betting the under here at a good price.
Matt, we talked about how Flupp called the Lamar Jackson injury and got all that CLV. Read his own press clippings about how great he was, and then he hasn't won a bet since. The surprising thing coming out of the Carolina game was how many players said that they overlooked the Saints because they beat the Packers. I was like, first of all, you're not good enough to do that. That being said, there's 0% chance that happens again. They're probably they're gonna have the worst week of practice as far as the coach riding them. Mr. Eric Eager is gonna get in there in the practice field. He's gonna read them the riot act like Rob read Flupp the riot act after last week's performance. Matt, what do you make of the game here?
Yeah, like a young Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna steer a little bit away from kind of the numbers and all that sort of thing. And listen, my general stance on the Carolina Panthers is that they're actually a pretty good football team, but their quarterback sucks. And I'm at the point where I'm sorry, Bryce Young sucks. And luckily, because everybody knows that he sucks, is most of the time that you can get a pretty good number on the Panthers, and it's why they've covered so much when Bryce Young plays. People are looking at this, I think, and going, well, they beat them 31-0 or whatever it was in the earlier matchup back in Carolina. But you just mentioned the practice session that the Panthers are going to have for losing to the Saints. What about the focus that the Falcons are potentially going to have, in this quote unquote revenge spot, right? Because as we know in the NFL, the one key motivator for these guys who have all the money, et cetera, is embarrassment. And this team embarrassed them last time. And by the way, the box score wasn't even that bad. So it's not like they were wildly outplayed. There was just a couple of high leverage plays that didn't go their way, and things kind of snowballed against the Falcons. So I don't love the whole you're coming back from Europe type of deal and you're not taking the bye week. But again, I think we're going to get sort of an ultimate focus type setup here for the Falcons. And again, I'm just going to need more points in general to back the Panthers, who, as we mentioned, that Packers game, they were 13-point underdogs in that game. And, again, just mentioned the Packers and being not super sold on them. I don't think the Packers are 10 points clear of the Atlanta Falcons at this point in the NFL season. So I actually think we're getting a little bit of value here on the Falcons. And to be honest, you mentioned the cutting room floor with regards to the hammer picks. This one ended up on the cutting room floor for me. It was almost in one of the very illustrious 3 hammer selections, or whatever you guys call it over here. I'm still getting a feel for the dynamic.
I wonder what the cutting room floor hammers are doing on this season, because I feel like last week I pivoted off of Seattle, Arizona over, and it won. Okay, from a purely matchup standpoint, I think it plays well into Carolina's hands. The strength of the Carolina offense is their run game, 7th in rush success rate. Atlanta's 29th in defensive rush success rate. It was bad before Jonathan Taylor torched them, and it's even worse now. On the other side of the ball, Atlanta wants to run the ball with Bijan, 12th in rush success rate. Carolina happens to do a great job defending against the run, 5th in defensive rush success rate. That being said, I've got nothing on the game. I don't know what number I would need to get interested. At Atlanta -3, I'd be tempted, but I don't want to belabor the point. Before we move on to the next game, if you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe. Drop comments for Matt. Matt's doing a great job. Really appreciate his insights. Flupp and I were carrying the load on Tuesdays, and it's nice to have somebody. Now we can slack off a little bit.
Let me cook.
We throw it to Matt, and then you and I can chill out a little bit. Let's move on to the Chargers and Jacksonville, though. Right now, the Chargers are 2.5-point favorites, 120. Totals 43.5, shade of 115 to the over. The one way to move the ball in the Chargers defense is on the ground. They're middle of the pack run D. Jacksonville's 3rd in defensive rush success rate. We talked about it against the Rams, Seahawks, and Texans. 3 games where Trevor Lawrence didn't play good. If they can't run the ball, it forces Trevor Lawrence in the 3rd and long, and that's problematic. I actually want to bring up a graphic that I was digging through on FTN, and I asked them to make it for me because I want to put in perspective what kind of season Trevor Lawrence has had. Right now, he's 28th in EPA per dropback, 26th in passing success rate, 28th in adjusted completion percentage. I keep hearing about receiver drops is hurting him. This number says beg to differ. 15th in ADOT, 27th in yards per attempt, 15th in catchable air yard percentage, 31st in completion percentage of 20-yard throws, and yet all that top 7 clean pocket rate. FTN, listen, if you want to dig into the numbers like this, they do some really great work. Make sure that you use the Hammer 10 code for 10% off. Get the Stats Pro package, Stats Goat package. Head over to ftnfantasy.com or click the link in the description. Matt, Trevor Lawrence has not been good. Is it time to start having a conversation about what he is? Because it feels like people are hanging on to this hypothetical ceiling of being the first overall pick. And I don't even think he's playing like an average quarterback right now. I think he's actually playing quite bad.
Yeah, I'd even ask, like, who are these people, right? This is one of those, like, straw man things where it's like somebody out there might be still saying this, but I'm not sure anybody is still saying this. Like, I think we're all kind of in agreement that, like, it might work somewhere else, right? Like, as we've seen in the NFL, right? A lot of it is fit. And you can find yourself a better fit. Trevor Lawrence has been through now 3 coaches and still haven't really found the correct fit. So, maybe
Liam Cohen was supposed to be the guru. He came out of a bye and they looked awful. There's nothing, like nothing's improved.
That's right. And I got to tell you, I think we were probably, and listen, I was on Houston last week, so I was delighted by the comeback. But if that comeback doesn't happen, we might have had this same scenario that we've kind of talked about where a team wins and gets downgraded because, like, the Texans donated 17 points to the Jags, right? Yes. Again, like, maybe the Jags should fold the franchise for even losing that game. But, like, they were definitely, I think, headed for a downgrade, even if they had won that game. And if they hadn't, we would be getting, like, well under a field goal here with the Chargers, a team who, kind of in the opposite way, has the synergy between head coach and quarterback, and they know what their flaws are. And as much as we want to downgrade them on like a week-to-week basis because of the injuries, to obviously both offensive tackles, but more importantly or more recently the Joe Alt situation, it's just like, yeah, you know what? Then all of a sudden the defense just stops giving up touchdowns. And the run game starts to cook a little bit, right? And everything gets a little bit better everywhere else. And that's the sign of a good football team. And again, I talked off the top about the Patriots being really buttoned up. And in this league, in this NFL, where, again, so many teams just screw things up to lose football games, the Chargers are really good also at not screwing things up. And so it doesn't look all that flashy very often. But compared to the Jags, who, they're pulling some stuff off because of the turnovers that they generate. I think a lot of people like the Steelers last week because they expected them to generate some turnovers from Justin Herbert, and it just didn't happen. And so, I think the Herbert interception number is like 8 this season, which is way higher than it was last year. I think he only had like a couple during the regular season. Obviously, had that crazy playoff game where I think he threw 4. The guy by and large doesn't turn the ball over, and I don't, and again, if you're sitting there hoping for the Jags to turn the ball over or get 3 turnovers. Man, that's a tough bet to make, and so if I had to go one way here, I would go the Chargers. I don't love obviously kind of coming in here on the Jags when they're sort of downgraded as such, but that loss last week might have a lingering effect, and if that's the case, then this might be cheap on the Chargers.
Yeah, and I don't know that Brian Thomas will be back from what could be a high ankle sprain. Flup, any thoughts on the game or the market? How are you parsing it?
I'm surprised to see a 2.5. I mean, it's the only 2.5 on the board here, and I think this gets to an even 3 just based on the steam. I mean, it's been all Chargers money, and I think we see a clean 3. I don't think people are weighing too much into the Travis Hunter injury because I don't think he was that big of an asset on either side. But I think it's still like something, and you can consider it almost a cluster, especially with Brian Thomas, which is why we're going to see more Chargers money come in my opinion.
Yeah, but the wide receiver group is grim for the Jets.
Yeah,
grim.
I'll tell you something.
With all due respect to Jacoby Myers,
the Jags are like middle of the pack in pressure rate, and that's news to Herbert's ears because the current state of his O-line is not good. He's been making magic happen. Speaking of magic and voodoo and like all the things that don't make sense and how do they win games, Cincinnati is playing in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's 5.5 minus 104. Totals 49.5 shaded 120 to the under. Russ, let's kick it off with you because you've got your first play, your first hammer officially. What is it?
Sorry, what game were you talking about, George? You kind of cut out on me there, man.
Cincy in Pittsburgh, Mr. Voodoo himself, Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, the Voodoo Master. Okay, so the one sentence elevator pitch on this is I kind of just think it's going to be exactly like the last game between these two, where it's just both teams going up and down the field, which you could make the case is every game for the Cincinnati Bengals, and I don't know why that would necessarily change, and I don't know why that one team would be necessarily favored by 5.5 points over the other team. And so, like, we could just kind of stop there if we're kind of running low on time. Otherwise, for me, it's the Joe Flacco thing has been a really fun sort of thing with the team that would otherwise be incredibly boring. And we saw what it looked like with regards to Jake Browning back there. And, listen, can Aaron Rodgers take advantage of the Bengals defense in a way that some of these other, like, more creative, interesting offenses, like the Bears, for example, have? Yeah, probably to an extent, but, we just watched it last week. And, as we get closer towards the end of the season here, Aaron Rodgers never, for the last couple of years, all that interested in getting hit. Starting to get cold. The old guy's a little brittle, right? He was indoors and he was spinning away off of a throw where he just absolutely airmailed Kenneth Gainwell last week. So I don't trust Rodgers here, in Pittsburgh, kind of the worst place, I think, for him for November and December, to be able to just kind of push the ball down the field against a Bengals team that has allowed that to some of the other quarterbacks, but that should be able to score on Pittsburgh just as easily.
Yeah, flop 5s, 5.5s in markets. Either going 4.5, 4, or 6. Which direction do you think is more likely?
There hasn't been a ton of action. There's been a little Cincy money, but then there's been some buyback. It's been a little confusing. And 5 to 5.5 is not that big of a move. It's like a couple cent move. So it's one of the deadest numbers out there. I don't really. I think it just stays between 5 and 5.5. Personally, I don't think it breaks to 6. Would be pretty big, and 4.5 would also be reasonably big too. So I just think it stays between 5 and 5.5.
I don't have much to add. I just wanted to say 3 things about this game. Number one is Trey Hendrickson looking doubtful, which pretty bad for a Cincinnati defense that is awful with him or without him. The thing that surprised me is Cincy is 3rd in rush EPA, 5th in rush success rate. I had no idea that their run game has been this good. And then I think the last point is, imagine you're Cincinnati. Your, season has been lost. Joe Burrow is out. Somehow you've scraped some wins together. Joe Flacco's playing his heart out. And then Joe Burrow shows up to practice on Monday. First of all, to terrify Survivor bettors that have Baltimore for Thanksgiving week. That's the first scare that happened.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But his teammates I don't want to go down narrative street, but how are you not a little bit more, we might get back in 3 weeks. The season might not be lost. I don't know. Those are the only 3 comments I had. I didn't have much by way of the game.
Yeah, George, he stood up there in the press in one of his media availabilities, right? And he literally quoted the Steelers record. He's like, the Steelers are 5-4 leading this division. Like, we are not out of it yet. And so, again, just because you want to win doesn't mean you get to win. But when it comes to motivation, having Burrow there to say to you, like, guys, we're playing Pittsburgh this week. Beat them. And, It seems like the target for him is week 13, which is is week 12 next week. And then maybe he's back. And it's like, you win this game and it is on with Joe Burrow. And so, again, I don't know that that's necessarily going to actually result in anything because the defense is still god-awful. But if you're going to, if we're looking for half points, we're scrounging for sort of, percentages of probabilities to go our way here with regards to Cincinnati, I'll cling to that. Again, part of it is the calling out of the defense after the last game. That has to, again, touch on some of these guys' pride. Again, doesn't necessarily mean they get to make some stops here, but it's not like they're facing even like the Bears offense, which when it's going can go pretty good. The Steelers offense is not impressive to me at all.
You know what those things are? These little narratives, Matt. If you bet on Cincy, it just makes you feel a tiny bit better. There's no point value. It's just a nice to know. And then if you're on the Steelers, you're like, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
It's free roll.
So it's one of those. Let's move on to Tampa Bay and Buffalo. Right now, Buffalo is 5.5 minus 110. Total's 47.5 minus 120 to the over. Russ, I know you got to play on it, but I want to ask Flup a question first about the market. Flup, we might be getting some Buffalo corners back. Taron Johnson and Christian Benford were down to the wire inactives. Dalton Kincaid, we learned the Bills tight end will be out for weeks. Doesn't look like Godwin or Bucky Irving are back this week. It's been straight under money, hasn't it been?
Look, yes, it has been, and it also opened about 6.5 at Penny and FanDuel, and it's been bought back down obviously a little bit in Tampa Bay's favor. So that leads me to believe that we're going to see a little bit more Tampa Bay money. So I think this is a buy on two things. The under is probably a buy in the corners, and also maybe like a little concern with Buffalo's offense. I mean, they did nothing versus Miami. It was pretty pathetic performance against a team they should have blown out. So I think we're seeing both things at play here, which is why we continue to see under money and Tampa Bay money.
Matt, Buffalo loves to run the ball. Tampa stops it well.
Yeah.
You would think Buffalo would realize let's not run into a brick wall, but you have a triple hammer in this game. You're seeing something here.
I do. I think so. My general strategy with regards to the Buffalo Bills, right, is they are, as they admit, right, built to beat Kansas City, which is obviously pass first offense team that can't, really run the ball all that great. They keep running Kareem Hunt out there for multiple carries per game. And without Bucky Irving, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are, kind of that homeless man's version of the Kansas City Chiefs, where it's like Baker Mayfield, do some stuff, run around, convert some long third downs, do a Patrick Mahomes impression. And when the Bills play a team that wants to run on you, the Baltimore Ravens, the Miami Dolphins, right? We saw in that first game against Miami where they busting out Ollie Gordon and running HN, and they were able to hang in there with the Bills that first time around, which maybe should have given us a clue with regards to what could potentially happen last week. But also, there's also that letdown element. And, that was an inherently, for lack of a better term, just stupid game for Buffalo, right? Like you end up soaked because you're getting a classic like Miami rainstorm, the fumbles for both James Cook and Josh Allen with that ridiculous interception on the goal line. Like it was just this completely like out of character type game, the type of thing that drives narratives about letdown spots, right? But like, again, these guys are human. And the Buccaneers, speaking of humans, right? Like they were kind of riding high early on in the season and they got a lot of credit in the betting market. And then things started to dwindle down a little bit. And I think we would sort of have more of a red flag on them if they had lost that game going into the bye week against the New Orleans Saints, where they mustered, I think, I don't even think they had 200 total yards in that game, but they got a Spencer Rattler pick six on he just tries to dump the ball over a backup defensive end's, hand, and it gets picked off, and things fall apart for the Saints in that game. So, if they get upset in that game, we're talking about a team that's lost 3 straight around a bye week. And, eventually you can hang with some of these teams with some of these injuries that they've had. But, Bucky Irving was an incredibly important piece of that offense. And Rachaad White's not doing it. And so I don't think that the Bills are going to have the same issues defensively as they have against the Ravens or the Dolphins or some of these other run-first type teams. And then we were talking about just how absolutely terrible they looked last week. I trust Josh Allen at home to, even if James Cook is not an option from a straight-ahead run game perspective, I trust Josh Allen to play well, find James Cook, maybe in the passing game a little bit here. And listen, I would have said the same thing about the Bucs run defense, and then I would have watched Travion Henderson just gash them for multiple long touchdowns last week, which, again, something that James Cook could do here as well. So I think this is bounce-back type spot here. I think we're probably overrating as a society the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, by the way, may not have any interest in coming up to Buffalo on a cold Sunday afternoon.
You got Buffalo as your triple hammer minus 5.5. Two things, just quick notes. Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield is nursing something with his oblique. He popped up last minute on the last injury report before the Detroit game. You could see it. He was reluctant to run. He hasn't run. And then the other thing I will say, you mentioned Bucky Irving and the importance of him. The Bucs are bottom 10 in red zone, turning red zone trips into touchdowns, only 52% of the time. It's because they can't run the ball when they need to, and obviously they've lost their Mike Evans jump ball. Let's move on to Houston, Tennessee. Right now, it looks like FanDuel is 7 minus 110 in market, 38.5, shaded 115 to the under. I'll start off here, guys, just because it's an injury game. There's some key injuries to watch for Tennessee. The last time we saw them before the bye, they were without Calvin Ridley, Jeffrey Simmons, and Arden Key. I expect Key back. Ridley's timeline would put him back in line here because they didn't put him on the IR, and Simmons is – we'll see what happens there. For the Houston Texans, they'll be without 2 offensive linemen, Ed Ingram or Titus Howard. They didn't play last week. We're going to see if they're back this week. The big one is, though, C.J. Stroud. And I guess that takes us to Flup. If you think Stroud is available, I'll be honest with you. I think it's like a 75% chance he doesn't play. He got fenced. He got fenced when he got concussed, and they ruled him out on Tuesday last week, which is an instant rule out. That means they did not think that there was a chance that he played last week, and because of that, I think it's more likely than not he doesn't play this week. That being all said, Flup, how are you parsing this injury? How are you parsing the line, and where do you think it goes with and without Stroud? And do you have a play for us here?
Yeah, I mean, I do have Texans -7 here. I kind of felt like Stroud was likely to play. I don't see too many concussions lasting more than 1 week, which is kind of the biggest reason. Now I hear your point about the Tuesday thing, and I also saw some initial money come in on Texans, which is why I thought maybe some people were believing. That being said, I just see 10 minutes ago there's some Tennessee money, so I'm already getting a little bit nervous there. Obviously, this is again just a basic injury bet. It's never going to close 7. I'm either going to get like an 8.5 or 9 with Stroud in, or it's going to close under 7 without Stroud.
Yeah.
So I will look like a genius or an idiot at the end of this week. So hopefully it's the first option.
Yeah, I think there's some asymmetric risk there where it's like, listen, even if it's Davis Mills. So I kept hearing that maybe this is a Davis Mills line already, and I disagreed. I thought it was a bit in the middle. I make it 6 with Davis Mills, and I make it 9 with Stroud. So I'm watching this. I think Flup, you have better upside risk. That being said, I'm very strongly leaning that he doesn't play. One of the things, though, is I really want to see if Ed Ingram plays for the Houston Texans, because interior O-line of Houston is bad. Jake Andrews is the 31st ranked center out of 37 centers, according to PFF. Drews Scruggs and Jarrett Patterson at guard without Ingram is awful. The strength of the Tennessee defense is Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat, and they could absolutely blow up the interior of the Houston O-line. I almost gave out Tennessee, and I didn't do it for many reasons. Part of it because I was there. But Matt, what do you make of the game? I think it's hard for us to really break down the game when we don't know what's going to happen at quarterback. But I guess my question to you is, where do you see this thing going with and without Stroud?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned like I was gonna go with it, but I'm not. And I was like a deranged person, because to sit here on Tuesday and be like, yeah, this is one of my top 3 bets would be some truly psychotic behavior. On if I was to say the Titans, which that is where I'm leaning, because I got to tell you guys, like Stroud or otherwise, I kind of think the Titans win this game. And I don't know why that necessarily is. I mean, part of it is because it's the Texans, and like nobody no-shows a game like the Texans do. And having pulled off that comeback last week, it's got all the makings of the Texans just not showing up at all against the Titans team that, like, when they fired Callahan, I like immediately upgraded them like a couple of points, because it's like that guy was costing them actual football points on the field. And so, again, that is putting McCoy in the crosshairs going forward. But like, coming out of the bye week, maybe there's, a little bit, again, I was going to say, right, like the buttoned up element, right? Like maybe Cam Ward doesn't start pulling Will Levis type moves, which like Cam Ward has been doing a lot this season. From a market perspective, let's put it this way. I would have kind of expected, if Davis Mills was to play, I would expect this line to be around 3.5. Wow. And yeah, well, that would be my expectation based on how the market treated Davis Mills last week. I would be super into the Texans if that was the case, because I think what we may have realized last week is that we can add the Mills-Stroud combo to some of these other teams where the backup quarterback isn't actually that much worse than the guy who's making the hundreds of millions of dollars, right? Think Arizona, think some of these other teams. Because Davis Mills has been in that system for like 5 or 6 years, or with that team for 5 or 6 years. He started for 2 full seasons when he was straight out of college, right? We always think of Davis Mills as like Davis Mills, when it's like that was like the worst position a guy could be put in for the first couple of years of his career. And the offense doesn't change because CJ Stroud isn't any particularly mobile quarterback. So, again, watching that game last week, I was like, yeah, Davis Mills can do a pretty good CJ Stroud impression. And so I would be super into that. And so I think this number is that kind of in-between number, because when Stroud was last in 2 weeks ago, the market rating for Houston was a little bit higher than this. And so I would have this about 8.5 if Stroud was to play. So part of me wants Stroud to play so that I'm not conflicted about potentially getting sort of the number that I want with Davis Mills, if that is, sort of a 4.5, something like that. So I know I'm going to kind of keep my fingers crossed and maybe get a 7.5, 8 if Stroud's able to play. And that's just kind of how I'm treating this game. But, when I say I kind of have a hunch that just like the Titans just win this game, maybe the points don't matter at all. And it just matters on how much of a money line we're actually going to get.
Let's read some comments just because Connor thinks it's going to be multi-week. Couple, Andrew says the beat writers don't see him playing. I think we're getting a lot of this. Have we forgotten the Titans aren't a real football team? Houston's D will cover 7 on their own. Here's the thing, Flop. There's a chance that you got a bad number here.
Yeah, definitely.
And it doesn't matter. There's like, whereas like Houston just wins. I'm very curious. I don't know what to do with this game quite yet. I know that I could get a really good number right now because I firmly believe it's going to be Davis Mills.
This is a funny spot too, where it's like, say you wanted a tail and you get a better number later in the week. It's probably a worse bet because that means it's more likely that Stroud is not in. So like that's the funny thing. You shouldn't be tailing if you get a better. Oh, I'm getting a better number. You're getting a worse position because you don't have the upside.
Unless you think that Davis Mills isn't that much of a downgrade.
Right. Of course.
Right.
All right. Hey, listen, if you guys want to take part in this, like, just drop comments. First of all, if you haven't done it, smash the like button. And one more thing, if you haven't yet, subscribe to our newsletter. Like we do 3 times a week. Mondays, injury reports, takeaways, NFL, early leans, plus NHL thoughts from Alex Moretto. Tomorrow, first practice report. You're going to know, have a better idea of what's going to happen with Stroud if you're subscribed to our newsletter. BetStamp gives out some plus EV props. Kirk's hammer on Friday. He writes some like stuff that he's observed as a pro better, stuff to make you better. You can subscribe now at thehammer.bet and never miss a newsletter. Let's move on to maybe might be the game of the week. Actually, there's a couple of really nice games. Seattle at the LA Rams. LA Rams -3, -110. Total 48.5. Shaded 112 to the over. Flup. We got to LA Rams -3. The market spoke and said the Rams are the better team. Do you see Seattle buy back or does it stay here?
No, I think there's a lot of more LA love than there is Seattle love here. And it's not like we're saying that like the Rams are sizably better than the Seahawks. They're saying they're a little bit better than the Seahawks.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to have a hard time people saying Matt Stafford versus Sam Darnold. I want to buy Sam Darnold here when I'm only saying that he's a little bit worse.
Yeah.
Like I just don't think we're going to see a lot of buyback here. I think we're more likely to see a move to 3.5 than we are back down to 2.5.
Yeah. Matt, what are your thoughts on this game and where this line is right now?
Better football game to watch than one to necessarily bet, right? I think the 2 best teams in the NFC are playing on Sunday. I also think that the Eagles and the Lions are playing on Sunday. So, what's the interesting thing? I don't know if you guys have peeked down if you've done a little scroll down FanDuel and you've looked at some of the look-ahead lines. Both of these teams' rating has just absolutely shot through the roof after last week's late afternoon triple fiasco of football games, where the Rams are a 6.5 point favorite over the Buccaneers, which is that, at just some simple math has sent them past the Bills from a power rating perspective, which I think is the first time that's happened in multiple years. And meanwhile, Seattle is 12.5, I think, on the road against Tennessee next week, which again is a pretty massive upgrade from where that line might have been, say, 3 or 4 weeks ago. So, seeing those 2 teams kind of skyrocket, I would prefer them not to be playing each other because I would like a, 1.5 or 2 points of value against some other opponent. Maybe not necessarily the Titans next week, but that's the most interesting thing into how the market is sort of treating these two teams. It's like they are kind of battling each other upwards, while with the Rams being that team that, as you guys mentioned, is, what I would say 2 points, being considered 2 points better because they don't have a ton for the Rams home field advantage necessarily, at SoFi Stadium.
Yeah. Two things, Flup. Do you remember 2 weeks ago we had a conversation with Clive, and we were talking about how big of a favorite they were against the Saints? And then I asked the question, how many teams are definitively better than the Rams? Feels like that list keeps getting smaller and smaller the more data points we get.
Yeah.
I will say two things. I think the only daylight between them, as far as from aspects of the game that works, is Seattle can't run the ball, 26th in rush EPA and rush success rate.
Well,
if the Rams can figure out how to do what nobody has, and that's stop JSN, we might see ugly Darnold again. We saw him against Texans, and unfortunately the Texans offense couldn't punish him.
George, I think I just think that it's a little misleading that we say in the Seahawks can't run. That's intentional. They intentionally do that because their passing game is the best in the league, or second best in the league. So, I was just watching a whole video on how the whole offense, Clint Kubiak's offense, is entirely set up on basically saying yes, the run is not going to be that good, but our pass is going to be elite. So I push back on that narrative, because it doesn't matter with JSN and Darnold cooking. It doesn't really matter.
That game last week got a little bit dicey for those of us at -6.5, just because we're kind of psycho, where we're like, oh man, we could get backdoored here. Cardinals are moving it up and down the field, and there was a point because I think Darnold turned the ball over a couple of times, or the Seahawks did in general, and then Zach Charbonnet, there was just a drive where he was like, you know what, enough of this BS. I'm just going to take over this game. We're going to rack up a couple of first downs. We're going to take a bunch of time off this clock, and maybe it just ends in a field goal, but enough of the Cardinals having a pulse here. So that was at least interesting to me, in that it was when they absolutely needed to run the football in a kill the clock type of scenario, at least they were able to do that. So I think there is some road for Walker and Charbonnet to improve the sort of metrics in the second half of the season.
I'm going to push back on you, Flup, if you don't mind. The Seahawks, the Seahawks run the ball the second most times per game. They have a desire to run. They just don't do it well. It starts off in the interior O-line. Jake Sundell, their center, is going to be out. I like their backup, though, so I won't make too big of a deal. But the two guards, Gray Zabel, he's a rookie, 49 grade on PFF, 67th out of 79 qualifying guards. Anthony Bradford, a 50 grade, he's 62nd out of 79 guards. I don't know if you guys remember the old Shaqting a Fool in basketball, and it was basically JaVale McGee with 3 out of the top 5 highlights.
Yes.
Anthony Bradford, just right now, you Twitter search Anthony Bradford, you are going to see a highlight reel of a guy who can't block and plays right guard. It's unbelievable. Poona Ford, Braden Fisk, and Kobe Turner could destroy this interior O-line. I also think Ernest Jones being out is pivotal for the Seattle defense. So I will push back on you, Flup. I actually think Seattle wishes they could run the ball better. But let's leave it at that. Let's move on to San Francisco, Arizona. I guess this is the less desirable NFC West matchup, and it's mostly health. Brock Purdy, Pearsall, we don't know what's going on with them. And Arizona got killed with a bunch of injuries. Right now, San Fran 2.5 -115 at FanDuel, 48.5 shaded 115 to the over. We said the injuries: Walter Nolan, Darius Robinson, 2 defensive linemen left the game. Mac Wilson, Max Melton, Will Johnson were inactive. Their safety left the game. Their right tackle left the game. Running back left the game. Too much uncertainty for me to truly dive into this game. The only thing I will say is I think we talked about San Fran's defense being worse than perceived. I think the injuries are starting to expose themselves as they play good offenses. And Jacoby Brissett, it's interesting to note, he looked really good in his first 3 games against the Packers, Colts, and Cowboys, which were bad defenses. And then they faced a good defense last week, and he clearly struggled. Now, that being said, that's not the case. Just something to monitor going forward before we love the Brissett story, that maybe when he plays really good defenses, we start to see why he's been a backup for most of his career. That being said, I don't know. Flup, so much uncertainty. This one went to 3, came back. Money to the over, came back. Feels like a lot of difference of opinion in the league and a lot of uncertainty this week, right, Flup?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think, people are Chiefs. Sorry, Chiefs are off a bye, correct?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, I think people really like the Chiefs off a bye spot here, because Andy Reid has historically done exceptional at that.
Yes, hold on. What does Andy Reid got to do with San Fran and Arizona?
Sorry, I was thinking of the wrong game. I'm sorry about
Yes,
that.
no problem. Don't jump ahead. We'll get to that one, Flup. Uncertainty in this game. Buyback went to 3, back down, went over. Money came back on the under. A little bit of mixed messaging in the market here.
Doesn't that have a lot to do with the injuries, George? Like, sorry to hop in here on you. That you listed off those injuries that are the only reason where I could possibly see how San Francisco would be favored in this game, because listen, San Francisco's got all the injuries of their own, and as you mentioned, right, that started to pile up, and was evidenced last week, and obviously you mentioned the Jacoby Brissett thing too, right? The backup quarterback has tough time on the road against a good defense, no shit, right? You know what I mean? I think it's going to be a little bit easier for him against this 49ers defense. Again, when you look at the depth chart, it's rough, right? There's nobody that you can recall seeing on this 49ers depth chart before. So I just want to kind of hop in there. Sorry about that, Chris.
I want to give you an analogy. So, say you got to.
Are we going on another date, George? Are we going on another date? Are we going?
No dates.
Are we hunting women at the bar again?
No. We never do that.
Okay.
When you say something is off kilter by a little bit, you can readjust it. You can picture what the effect is. You know how gears work where they're all attached to each other and there's like 15 gears. The problem is there's so much uncertainty. If you're off on everything just a little, you can get very out of whack very fast. I need a Wednesday report on a game like this. It's just too messy. I can project 2 injuries on a side. I can't project when one team could be missing 8 guys, and I think that becomes a problem. I don't have the information out there.
So I was just looking. I see what you mean. I think clearly there's just 2 different groups here, and it's just 2. I don't even think it's opinions on how good the Cardinals and Niners are. Just like you said, it's just what is going to happen with these injuries. And we see when it gets to 3, people want to buy Arizona, and when it gets to 2.5, they want to buy San Fran. So we're just going to see back and forth, and then you can't even read the market here, because it's basically just you need to know what's going to happen with these injuries, and then we'll know where the line's going to go.
Yeah, this is a problem for the Thursday show. I feel like we're speculating at best here. I don't think we have any concrete thing to go with. Let's move on to the Kansas City game. Kansas City at Denver, coming off a bye. Denver off the Thursday game. 3.5 minus 115 for Kansas City. Totals 44.5, shade of 115 to the under. I want to start off because it is my double hammer. I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs here, minus 3.5, minus 115. I think this is interesting. I think the red zone matchup, something to watch. The Chiefs have the 3rd best red zone offense, converting 70% of their possessions into touchdowns. Denver's been the stingiest red zone defense. 37% of teams only get a touchdown. Now, that's been aided by Jets, Giants, and Raiders games where they look far better. I think Denver's an enigma in offense. 18th in EPA, 28th in success rate, 20th in dropback EPA, 30th in dropback success rate. They are not consistent. They don't move the ball well, and sometimes Bo Nix hits a big play. He's so erratic. Let's compound the problem, though, for them. J.K. Dobbins tweets the morning after the Thursday game that he hates the hip drop tackle. I suspect he's going on the IR. The information's starting to leak out there. He was clearly angry because he got hip dropped, and he might be missing. And I wonder, without a consistent run game, because they like to run, 14th in rush EPA, Steve Spagnuolo against a one-sided offense with a erratic quarterback feels like a recipe for disaster. To me, the truth is, I think there are some blowout scenarios for Kansas City, and we never got to see the effect of the Patrick Surtain injury yet. Stroud got hurt in the Houston game early. The Raiders don't have any wide receivers, so we still don't know how big the Surtain injury is, and I think the Chiefs have the ability and the weapons to really show what they're missing. Riley Moss gets picked on a lot, and I don't know who's going to stay with Rashee Rice in this game. Give me the Kansas City Chiefs 3.5 minus 115 as my double hammer. Flup, there are some 4s out there in market. Do you think we'll get some Denver interest? Do you think it feels like we're going to close 3.5. This is never getting to 3, and it feels like 4 is not the right spot to be.
Which begs me the question is why we're betting Kansas City at an expensive 3.5 right now. I'd rather wait. If you really want Kansas City, I'd rather wait and bet it later in the week. I just don't like. Are you really going to sit here and say the Chiefs are 5 points better than the Broncos and New Jersey? That's a big. I know the Surtain is obviously a big news, a big injury as you pointed out, but this seems expensive. So, and I think the market is definitely seeing that, and they're buying Denver. So I think we're going to keep getting Denver money. It's not going to close 3. It'll never close 3, but I think we're going to close 3.5 flat, and maybe even some cheap 3.5s for Kansas City's favor. So that's why I would wait to bet Kansas City here. If you want to bet, I'd bet Denver now. Yes,
for those with the luxury of waiting, for me who wants to get a hammer play in, I actually do make it 5.5 without Patrick Surtain.
Wow.
So I'm the guy who doesn't like Denver in market. You also remember, Flup, I sat there for 2 hours and debated using the Bears in Survivor over Denver. Should tell you that I am lower on Denver than market. And I'd like to think that Denver not covering against the Giants and Jets and the Raiders. And I think I'm more correct than where the market keeps landing on them. But that's just arrogance talking. Matt, what do you think of this matchup, KC and Denver?
Like, listen, you're not wrong, right? The proof is in the pudding. I mean, the market keeps wanting. This is like, the old movie Swingers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, right? They keep really wanting that the Broncos are that team, right? They want the Broncos to be the guy in the rated R movie. But the Broncos just keep refusing to be the guy in the rated R movie, right? They just keep being the guy in the PG movie where it's like, we're not going to actually hammer the Jets, the Giants, the Raiders, and so on and so forth, right? They're just going to win, and they're going to, kind of casually cover, or not cover, but just win and not cover. And we're going to be sitting here going like, this 8-2 team, like what an outfit this is. So, the market then sort of downgrades them because of that. And that's how we get to a point where they're getting 3.5 to 4 points at home against Kansas City. I think through about over an hour, everything we've said has been absolute genius so far. So I'm going to step in. I'm going to say something dumb. I don't think that Patrick Surtain potentially matters as much in this matchup as we might think, because if he played, all the Chiefs would do is like put Xavier Worthy out there and just like run him on go routes and just play 10 on 10 the rest of the game. Do you know what I mean? Like they would deal with Surtain in a way, because Andy Reid is an offensive genius, that you wouldn't, it's not like Surtain's going to be constantly breaking plays up and so on and so forth, right? They would just sort of handle it the way that Andy Reid tends to handle some of these really, really good players on defense. And that could be a pass rusher, that could be a linebacker, that could be
who do you think they're going to put, who would they put on Worthy then? And that's it.
Well, so that's the scenario where now we're talking about Xavier Worthy kind of being more open, but he hasn't really ever kind of been the downfield like bomb threat. It's always been behind the line of scrimmage, screen passes, and let his speed sort of go there. And that's what I mean by like, it's not going to matter in the same way that like if Surtain was around to guard like Nico Collins against the Texans a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, yeah, that's going to really jam up our offense, because part of our offense is just throw the ball to Nico Collins down the field a lot of the time, right? So it's not, it's not like he doesn't matter, but it's like it doesn't matter necessarily as much just because of how smart I think Andy Reid would be about facing Patrick Surtain. And then the other thing, maybe a little bit less stupid, are the Broncos a J.K. Dobbins injury away from getting better at running back when Sean Payton has to play R.J. Harvey, and give him more than like 4 or 5 carries? He's even said like, oh, I'm the one keeping him from being the offensive rookie of the year because we split carries with our running backs. And it's just like, okay, I realize you're pumping his tires a little bit here for the rook, but like, I don't know, man. Like I again, a guy who followed, bets on college, is deep into the college scene, who's seen RJ Harvey do RJ Harvey things back at UCF. I just want to see more RJ Harvey. I want more. It's like cowbell, man. Just give me more RJ Harvey. And so again, 2 dumb things, because we've done 70 straight minutes of just absolute intellectual genius. Just thought I'd, mix it up and really just dumb down the show a little bit here. I know Flup's psyched about those 2 takes.
I tell you, Flup, I suspect something's happening here, okay? Normally you attack the third guest, you get a little, defensive, and then we never see them again. Clive disappeared, Matt realized,
Flup's thinking.
You are the decision maker on the Tuesday show. So he said, let me outflank Flup with a crazy opinion. Double down, and he's securing his spot for next week.
That was a bit.
I told you it was dumb.
Surtain is arguably the best cornerback in the league right now.
Agreed. And Andy Reid is aware of it.
You say he doesn't mean anything here is a bit ridiculous.
No. I said not as much as we might think because of how Andy Reid would handle Patrick Surtain if Patrick Surtain was
the fact that you're saying how he would handle, that means he's already game planning around Surtain. That's why I think the injury is a big deal here, because now he gets to use Rashee Rice as a weapon, and he's not. And look, Rashee Rice is considerably better than Xavier Worthy. He's clearly the number one favorite go-to guy. So I guess just to clarify, I think Rashee Rice was going to get his numbers no matter what, I think is my point, right? In that it was going to be like Andy Reid wasn't just going to allow Surtain to lock up Rashee Rice. It was going to, it was going to be worked around, whether it was, again, different matchups, et cetera, et cetera. The point is that, like, I think Andy Reid is capable enough that, Patrick Surtain's playing, we need to downgrade the Chiefs. That's not, my point is that wouldn't be the case. It would be like, no, actually, like, I'm not that worried about Patrick Surtain because, we do this thing with top corners where anytime a top cornerback goes against a top wide receiver, we immediately kind of give credit to the cornerback. Where we go, like Derek Stingley, he can like lock up this guy. And then it's like we forget that like the wide receiver that we're talking about, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, like, fill in the blank, CeeDee Lamb, whatever, ends up being like he gets his, right? He gets 4 or 5 catches for a chunk of yardage as well because he's really, really good as well. So again, my point was more just like I think Rashee Rice and the number, it was already going to be built in to Rashee Rice being able to have success. Travis Kelce going to get open, going to get schemed open by Reid. Just the stuff that the Chiefs do, right? Where it's like, yeah, they can actually survive without Rashee Rice doing anything if he happens to be or happened to be the guy who Courtland Sutton was going to be on, right? So again, my point was not that like it needs to be bet that the Broncos need to be bet because of it. It was more just like out of respect for the Chiefs, they're going to figure out a way to do it whether he's there or not.
I think we're burying the lead here, boys. Yeah. Kansas City double hammer. Doesn't matter what happens.
Not focused on the double hammer.
Let's move on. We'll get through these last 3 games quickly. Baltimore -8.5, -105 at FanDuel. Totals 39.5, shaded 112 to the under. If you like Cleveland, FanDuel's the place to bet them. It's best in market. I'll start off with the breakdown of this game. To me, the Ravens are a tricky team when using season-long data, just because of the offensive dip without Lamar, but also their defense has gotten better since the Houston game when every starter returned. As far as Cleveland, it's like they're bad offensively, 30th in EPA, 32nd in success rate, and they're good defensively, 4th in defensive EPA, 2nd in defensive success rate. The last time they played, if you guys remember, Cleveland kept it close due to like stuffing Baltimore's red zone offense a bunch. And then the second half, eventually the Ravens used a bunch of turnovers, high leverage plays, blew it wide open. No Rashad Bateman and Marlon Humphrey could be a problem for the Ravens. Ultimately, I would never advise you bet the Ravens at FanDuel. If you like Cleveland, do it. I like the Ravens, and I want to see how low this hits because I might have some interest at 7 and then have a conversation at 7.5. Flup, Ravens haven't looked great yet since Lamar's return, and we saw some of the buyback, with the Browns here. What do you make of this game in this line?
I think the line, I don't think we get to a flat 7 at all. I think we're just going to, people are going to buy some 7.5s because they feel like they like Cleveland and you're getting a little bit of a touchdown and how good is Lamar really? Because he, like you said, he's coming off injury, yada, yada, yada. But if there's ever a 7, I think there'll be instant Baltimore money. People are going to want to pounce on that. So I think let's just bounce around between 7.5 and 8 and sell her somewhere around there.
Yeah, Matt, I assume this is going to be a popular teaser leg. Do you have much to add as far as the spread or anything in this game?
That danger zone on that teaser leg, right? A little bit too easy for everybody out there. Listen, we could do the whole thing about like the Browns, doing a nice job usually against Baltimore. I'd also sort of just reference like Baltimore, as soon as Lamar Jackson, everybody got healthy, the market rating went shooting back up. I don't know that the Browns are the team that's going to necessarily expose that. But I think there's a possibility that we're all just kind of making a lot of, speaking of narrative assumptions that the Ravens are just going to like be a Super Bowl contender again when, again, we're going to use all of the excuses with regards to the injuries, but like they weren't that great even before the injuries kind of happened, right? So, I don't know that the Browns are necessarily the team that can take advantage of that unless they're able to just run the ball over on repeat with Quinshon Judkins. we'll see if that's necessarily going to happen. So I would be a little bit worried about the teaser leg element, just because listen, weird things happen, especially weird things happen in Cleveland. So it's a pass for me.
Let's move on to the Detroit Lions and Philadelphia Eagles Sunday nighter. Eagles completed our 10-0 in our super team contest. Thank you, Flup, for that excellent pick. Philadelphia -2.5, -114. Totals 46.5, shaded 120 to the over. Listen, before we get into this game, primetime games, Rob gives out his fair value touchdown scores in the Discord. If you're not in our Discord yet, what are you doing, man? 1,200 members. We have anytime touchdown scorers. People are posting plays. Alex and a bunch of guys are jamming some good NHL stuff on Saturday. You can join right now at discord.gg/hammer. Please do that if you're not doing it already. And let's move on to this primetime game. So, like we said, Philadelphia with, I want to start with you, Flup, before we get into the analysis. Are you surprised this game's leaning close to 3?
No, especially after this abysmal performance by the Eagles here. The Lions have looked good. There's always been a lot of love in the market for Lions. And I guess not this past week because
no, I'm saying, are you surprised? Because this is telling us Eagles are better than the Lions in market. That's what it's.
Well, no, it's not. I mean, home field is not worth 3 points. I mean, I think this is basically saying that.
Eagles are 2.
Oh, sorry, I misread. Yes. You're right. I guess. Sorry, let me back up.
Yes.
If the Lions getting bought against. Sorry, the Commanders getting bought against the Lions last week was a sign that maybe someone doesn't like the Lions here, and the Eagles.
And the Eagles got pretty bought heavily last week.
So
against the Packers.
I guess it looked ugly, but I think people still think. I guess the market thinks. I don't think this, at least. I think people think that, or the market thinks rather, that the Eagles are still a very, very good team. They have a lot of talent, and they just match up better versus the Lions here. That being said, based on the market, we see anytime there's a 3 flat here, people want the Lions. They're all over it. I know I would love to bet the Lions at 3 flat. So. This will never close 3, in my opinion. I would be shocked. I think we'll see the 2.5, expensive 2.5 mostly.
To me, there's some there's some sneaky big Lions injuries. I think it's a thin secondary. Now Terry and Arnold down. Kirby Joseph still not back. I guess the big one, though, for me is Graham Glasgow. They already lost Christian Mahogany last week. And then Glasgow doesn't finish the game, their center. And now they face a Philly D-line that, first of all, have some big boys in the middle. And then now that Jalen Phillips is there and wreaked havoc, I knew he would do this. I loved him in Miami. Jalen Phillips, Nolan Smith. I listen, I disagree with this line, but I'm waiting on some injuries. I'm not in a rush to get involved. Detroit's an auto click for me at +3. But I'll be honest, I'm surprised it's leaning that way. Not that it gets there. Matt, how do you parse this game?
It'll be scary if it hits 3 and just doesn't move, right? Because to me, that's just the market, odds makers, whatever, just kind of taking a side and being like, we think Jared Goff is going to have a problem in Philadelphia on Sunday night. And we haven't really seen that matchup just yet for the Lions, unless you go back to kind of week 1 against the Green Bay Packers, where it's a road game against a good defense, good defensive front, and the Lions offense just kind of gets neutered to the point where Dan Campbell got involved last week with regards to play calling. And from what I understand, has done so in some other situations over the course of this season. So, this is a team that just lost at home to Minnesota. So I don't know that just because you go on the road and hammer the Commanders, all of a sudden it's a team that we can go back to kind of trusting in, kind of those unfamiliar kind of spots for the Lions, right? Because part of the excessive success that they had last season was they never had to leave the indoors, right? We forget that the handicap for the Lions going into that season was they're just playing indoors for 15 games this season. It's it's going to be super comfortable for Jared Goff. And then immediately, they play the Packers in that first week and the offense doesn't look all that great. And then there's been other scenarios, even just at home, Vikings, even the Buccaneers in that Monday night game a few weeks back, where you're I'm kind of waiting for a little bit more out of the Lions offense. And then they kind of realized last week, like, Jameson Williams exists. And so they're like, maybe we throw a few passes to him, and all of a sudden, like, things open up a lot better. Imagine that. You mentioned, obviously, the interior defensive line, offensive line matchup, and I think that's a massive issue here. That's probably why the Eagles have gotten the market rating bump that they have, because I don't think this would be the line going into last week. And again, we just talked about nobody being all that impressed with the Eagles last week. So this one's kind of scary, where it's almost like there's some matchups here that I think might supersede the general sort of power rating we might have for each of these teams.
Yeah, we've also gotten under money on this game. I guess it's Jared Goff outdoors at night in a cold weather season. I guess
interior pressure.
But I'd rather back the under than Philly, if I'm being honest, because there's also a version of this game where Philly doesn't play well offensively. Let's not belabor the point.
That's every game.
We got one more, Matt. We purposely saved the best for last, the Monday nighter where you got Dallas right now is 3.5-point favorites, -105. Totals 50.5, -110. If you like Las Vegas, it's best price in market. And, Flup's been known to pick off the best prices in market. Matt, you really, I think you're siding up to Flup here, so you can put in a good word for you. You like some of the best price in market, Las Vegas.
As you should.
Tell us why.
This isn't complicated. Listen, man, this is the Dallas defense. Like, it's tricked us, it's tricked society into thinking teams like the Arizona Cardinals and Jacoby Brissett are better offensively than they actually are, because the Cardinals are able to convert third and longs. I think they had 5 third long and long conversions in that Monday night game in the first half, including, I think, a couple of third and something teen to Marvin Harrison, because Marvin Harrison would just run down, turn around, and catch the ball. It cannot be sold that the Cowboys defense is as bad as it is. And again, maybe Quentin Williams comes in and he's like doing a bunch of stuff, and all of a sudden the defense is fixed. I doubt it. And when it comes to these bad defenses, no, I don't want to back you when you need to cover a number as a favorite, because you're just going to get backdoored if you win at all, which was, of course, well, it wasn't the case. They didn't need to get backdoored against the Cardinals. The Cardinals just flat out beat them. Going to Las Vegas with Brock Bowers back in the fold. He didn't do much, obviously, against the Broncos in that bleep show of Thursday offensive football. But again, that's the Broncos defense, right? We're going from the Broncos defense that is going to make you probably not like an offense to the Cowboys defense, which is going to make you like an offense. And so I think for this one game and one game only, Geno Smith is able to find wide open receivers. He's going to be able to look to Brock Bowers a ton. Ashton Genty's going to be able to do all kinds of Ashton Genty type things. And, this game is going to be at the very least close, but I think the Raiders knock them off at home, because I'm not buying anything that these Cowboys are selling. And again, like, you can get enamored with the Cowboys offense, but, they only had one offensive touchdown against the Cardinals. And, a lot of people were into them against the Broncos when they were getting plus 3.5 a couple weeks ago. And the Broncos offense, which otherwise we pretty much think is grotesque, was able to rack up like 40 points against the Cowboys, man. Everybody's offense looks way better. And I don't think we're getting that sort of feel here from the market, from the point spread perspective. Only I think we will by the time Monday night rolls around, when this game is concluded and the Raiders have won the game. Well,
Flup, are we going to close 3-110, or are we going to be in an in-between like we are right now?
I actually think there's a good chance we close 3-110. There's been some constant Raiders money, and I think honestly what Matt said is pretty accurate here. That
I did it, everybody. I got him on my side.
I have to. His Pat Surtain take was awful, but this one is good. I think there's a very good chance it goes. I would be shocked if it goes 3.5 flat. I would not be shocked if this closes 3 flat. I think the likely outcome is it's somewhere in between, but I think it's more likely to end up in the 3 flat.
I will say a couple things. I wrote down, this is the game of this is a battle of the stoppable force versus the movable object. 31st in offensive EPA are the Raiders. Defense for the Cowboys, 31st in defensive EPA. Something's got to give in this game. I'll say a couple things. I think Jackson Power Johnson going down for the Raiders at the offensive guard position, and Dylan Parham not finishing last week's game will be interesting. And which Quinnen Williams happens to be arriving. There's also the factor of like Dak Prescott, if you guys remember before the half, hobbled into the tunnel. And Geno also finished the game hurt. And we haven't heard any news because we don't get to hear news on bye weeks and like when it's last Thursday. And we won't hear any news till Thursday. So I'm very curious about that. Eric Stokes has been wonderful for Las Vegas. The only thing I will say is CeeDee Lamb. So we know he missed like 4 weeks with the high ankle. But the truth is you never get back to 100% till about the 8-week mark. There's a ramp-up period. We're now at the 8-week mark because CeeDee Lamb hasn't looked like CeeDee Lamb yet since returning from injury. So I wonder what it looks like with a healthy CeeDee Lamb. Theoretically, I don't know if he's going to be back, but that's the time frame. I don't know. I'm not doing anything with this game right now. There's like the cloud of how the mental psyche of the team after the Marshawn Nyland news. There's just too much uncertainty. Matt, it's your double hammer. I'm not going to get in your way here. We'll call it that. That was it. We ran through the gamut. There was some disagreement. I like it. There's some tension points. We need that. We can't just have Flup and I agreeing all the time. Let's do a recap though, Jacob, just to see and remind everybody what our bets are. And I suspect some people will scroll, tomorrow right to this part. But Miami 2.5 minus 110, minus 120 is my triple hammer. Flups is Houston -7 minus 110. Matt's is Buffalo 5.5 minus 110. I took the Chiefs 3.5 minus 115. Flups on the Carolina Atlanta under 42.5 minus 104, and Las Vegas 3.5 minus 115. And then I'm on Green Bay -7 minus 118. Flups on Minnesota -3 minus 104. Matt's on Cincy +5.5 minus 118. Wow, 9 different games, no overlap. That's incredible. The Thursday show, you see what they do? They just copy each other. They're all like sharing plays. We're like, fuck it. We like 9 different bets, 9 different things. I enjoyed myself. E-Colt, I missed you too, man. Please like the stream if you haven't done so already. Please watch the entire thing, E-Colt. Don't just pop up for the recap. We need the likes. Do us a favor. Drop some comments. Everything helps in the algorithm. Gets a chance to get in front of more eyeballs, and we appreciate it. And we appreciate you guys. Thank you for being a wonderful audience, dropping all your comments. Flup, first of all, thank you to you for joining us again every Tuesday. We'll get off the snide this week in a big way. Matt, thank you so much for your debut on the Tuesday Best Bet Show. I hope you'll join us.
What a treat. Oh, anytime, gentlemen. Anytime.
Beautiful. And upgrade your certain take next time. Or Flup, I saw Flup. He almost changed.
We'll see.
He was about to change one of his plays just to disagree with you, just because
I was thinking about that. Yes.
Listen, you've been a wonderful audience. Thanks to our sponsor, FanDuel. Thanks to Jacob for producing. Always does a great job. And thanks to you, the audience. Good luck with your bets and have a great rest of your evening.